Hello, this is the Road Glide Rider, and I'm fixing to do something that a lot of people want to do when they got a touring model that's got a radio and stuff. Everybody's got to admit the stock radio is not really that loud when you're going down the highway. Now, I have already, last year, upgraded the speakers to get a little bit better sound. It did improve the sound because when I was riding out for stock or speakers, you could kind of hear the music, but really couldn't really make out what was going on. I put in a nice set of 100-watt speakers, and they were great speakers. They improved the sound. I could actually make out what was going on. Of course, you know how we are when we're going on the road. We want to be able to blast it out. It didn't really blast out, but it did make it enjoyable. I could use the speakers when I wanted to. So this year, I decided I was going to put a set of amps in there with it. Put an amp in there. I only got 2 speakers. I don't have speakers on my tour pack because I have a detachable tour pack. And all I have is the 2 speakers up front. So I got an email from J&M. I've been dealing with J&M for a lot of years. I've used their headsets. Headsets are great. They're less expensive than the Harley Davidson ones. They work just as good or better. And the advantage of the J&M is you can actually use them with later models. The same headsets were used on the earlier radios can be used in the later ones. A lot of times when the Harley upgrades it, the headset itself stays the same. The cords don't hook up different. J&M has the cord that detaches, and you can change the cord and use the same headset and not have to pay that high dollar for new headsets. Anyway, I got an email from them. You can do the same thing. Go to jmcorp.com, jmcorp.com, and register on their email list. And they'll send you out coupons for discounts. They sent me one out for 20% off on an amp. So I got this. It's a 200-watt into 2-channel amplifier. I've already got speakers. I didn't need speakers. Of course, they sell kits that have speakers, the whole shot. They sell 200 watts. They send 400 watts into 2 speakers. They send 2-channel speakers, 4-channel speakers. You name it, they got it. And of course, the more power you have, the more speakers you have, the higher dollar it is. This I got 20% off. So hey, great. So now we're going to install it. It's a plug and play, super simple, comes with everything you need. Now, some amps, you get them, you have to take it into the dealer and have them put in software to get it to be compatible and stuff. J&M, no software updates required. Plug and play. It's tuned for this particular one is tuned for the 2015 and later Road Glide. Of course, it got the panels to mount it in. This is made specifically for the Road Glide. They have one that's made for the Street Glide. It has mounting bit to mount it, the amp in the fairing. Same thing with this. I don't want to do the Harley amps that mount in the saddlebags. Hey, I go on trips. I want my saddlebags. I don't want to have the space taken up by an amplifier. This works just good. So let's get on out. To put on, according to the instructions, you have to take your tank off to run the power line from the battery up to the amp. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to take the gas tank off. Of course, I'm going to take my fairing off so I can run the power from the battery up into the fairing. So we'll do that first, and then we'll get to taking the radio out to put the amplifier mounts under the radio in the space that's under the radio. So we'll get it in. So let's get to working on it. Now, after you get the gas tank off, pull the cover off, the trough where all the wiring goes. You run this main power line up through from the battery, up and through and into the fairing. The power, this main red wire goes onto the positive terminal. Now the instructions tell you to put the battery, do not place it on the negative of the battery. Place it on the frame. It says to hook the wire where the post goes to, that's down inside. So I'm going to hook into the frame here. So it'll still be the chassis ground, not battery ground. So let's get this thing installed and ran. Now, there's 4 screws, one right here, one right here, one right here, and over here. They're just take the screws out. Now it's got all kinds of wires connected and stuff. You can disconnect if you want to. All I did was rotate it back like this. That gave me plenty of room to get up here to put the bass in. So let's get the bass in there. Now, the amplifier goes in under the plate where the little opening is. It lines up and this plate screws in the top of it. Now make sure when you run your power, you run the power itself up here because it plugs in right here on this side. This side is where the sound comes in to this and the other plugs. Make sure. Now what I did is, I'm used to Harley, so it doesn't call for it, but I put a little drop of blue Loctite on each one of these screws because this is underneath the radio and I don't want it coming loose on me. So let's put the factory radio back in place and start hooking the wires up. Now, the back of it here is set up the plug because these are the 2 sets of wires that be plugged in. You have this wire, which is the control wires. Let me find the one to plug. It controls in there. It's got 2 plugs on the end of it. This plugs in to the connector for the speakers. Now the speaker connectors are down here. They're not up in here, they're right here connected. One's on this side, and of course you have the other one right up under here. Those plug in. You cannot mess it up because you can't plug the wrong one in because they're set up with male, female. And then on this wire, you also have this extra wire right here. That runs up and goes up under and plugs into the accessory lines right here. Now it's set up so that there is a there's something, plug one in and plug the other in into it. Now I have a splitter already on there because I have other stuff hooked up into it to power my CB and things like this. So I have an extra wire up there anyway, so I can just plug it in. This gives you power so that when you turn the ignition on, the amp comes on with a relay built inside to the amp. This way, if the ignition is not on, the power for the amp is not on. It's only on when you have the ignition on. So you're not going to run the battery down if you don't have the motor running. So let's get these plugged in. I'll plug in the first part right here and show you where that is. Now I have the wires all hooked up. The speakers plugged in. The wire run up here. Now I ran this power wire up underneath and I have it coming out right here so it's not down here dangling in the way. The only wire I have now loose now is my headlight plug. Everything else is up, tucked up in the way, out of the way. I put my headlight back in and I'm ready to go. Now I'm going to power it up and check the radio out before I do anything else. Of course, I still have to put the amp fuse back in the main power coming to this, because while I was doing all this, I did not put the fuse in for the amp, just in case. So let's try it out. Well, I've got it installed, the J&M amplifier. I got it all buttoned up, and I tested it, and man, it made a big difference. Before, I could put on regular speakers, and if I turn, I could actually have to turn up to like 4 or 5 dots on the screen before it started getting loud enough that I could hear it without the phone, hear it real good, clear. If the motor was running when I had there, I wouldn't be able to hear it. I can tell you right now, I started it, turned it at the same spot, and I could hear it over the motor. So it's definitely going to be louder going down the road. Now, one thing I will warn you about, make sure you test to make sure there's power to the amp before you bolt the radio back in and the Harley radio back in, because when I inserted the stuff, the negative wire plug actually pushed out of the socket. So I had to actually go in and make sure it went back in it to make sure. Now if you look, before you bolt the radio down, you can actually look at the front of the amplifier, and it's got a power light that tells you whether it's got power or not. And that's really, really handy to tell whether you have power going to it or not. So test it and make sure you have power going to the amplifier before you bolt everything back together. Because nothing's worse than bolting everything together and then it don't work. You can't figure out why. You have to take it all apart again to find out that all it was is the power wire, the negative ground going through the wire coming up to the amplifier was not contacting. I fixed that. Everything works. Everything, the radio, the amp, it's just really good. Anyway, so I hope this helps you. If you want to add an amp, easy to do. Different brands have different ones. You can have ones that are just going to plug into the speakers. And you don't have to worry about, on those, most of you don't have to worry about software updates. The ones you have to worry about software updates are those that have equalizers, things like this built into them. On the front of the amplifier, it's got several adjustments you can make, but it says right out, warranty voided, taken off, because everything's adjusted perfectly for use with 2 speakers and 200 watts total. So, if you like it, hit the thumbs up. Subscribe. You'll hear my next thing I'm coming up going to do. If you like it and it helps the algorithms with YouTube, I'm not monetized. I don't make money at this. I just have fun trying to tell people what they can do to help save money instead of spending it at the dealer. So if you want to put an amp in it, knock yourself out. I'm going to put a link down in the description of the time I put the speakers in. This way you can see, because I already had the speakers in it this time, and all I do is put the amp in it, and it's pretty straightforward. The most time I spent was taking the gas tank off and running the wire from the battery up to the front. That's what took the most time. So, you guys have fun, and I'll see you on the road.